May curiosity lead our way. Enjoy.
Now it's like I've long since stopped tracking, like, oh my God, it's been this many days since I've had a nap, or these are my hours of sleep per day. No, it's like I get up at this time of day, I am relaxing and potentially going to sleep around this time. Nothing in between. I got shit to
Yeah.
do. And usually the move is like, okay, he's down for his first nap. I'm gonna make my food. I'm gonna eat. I'm gonna do dishes and maybe sit down for 5 seconds to check my phone and check in on clients.
Hmm.
And the second I sit down, there's the cry. It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, shit, it's been 2 hours already. Sick.
The time has elapsed and it's on with the
Exactly.
day. Yeah.
Time is a construct. Oh, you're tired? No, it's doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
The funny thing about time as a construct, energy kind of is too.
What how do you define energy when you just assume that you have none of it at all times?
Well, that's exactly what I mean. When we exist via energy, right? And so is it
Yeah.
accessible to us in our, body? Maybe less so, but at the same time, like you and I both know, when shit hits the fan, there's always energy to tap into. And so it's a matter of accessibility.
Mhm.
So is this energy within me accessible right now? Yes or no? Seems like a better question to me than do I have energy? Like, and I say it to myself all the time because I go, it's a regular occurrence. Like, I'm fucking drained, different than you, just, but still tired. And it's like, well, am I? Because if I got excited about something, would I find that energy real quick? Probably. Like, what chemical reactions are changing in my body with that state change? I'm not educated enough to know these things, but it's very intriguing to think about because it's like I feel like tired is a construct similar to time. And yes, obviously sleep, you die without it after a certain amount of time, but I think it's longer than we think.
I think it's am I appropriately motivated to override whatever
Right.
sensory feedback I'm currently getting from my brain or nervous system otherwise to tell me to just slow down or to be like because like lethargy is something that you feel definitely when you're tired, but as you said, given the right motivator, you can completely override lethargy and have the same, if not maybe like slightly depressed, but like
Mm.
this an adequate amount of energy to overcome said lethargy and haul ass. Like
Yep.
be it like I hear something clang or bang that shouldn't have, and I'm immediately up. I hear something, a bump in the night, I'm immediately up. I go for my only time where I can train, and somehow I'm doing well. Yet I was like 5 seconds prior, pretty much dead on my feet. Like it's,
Hmm.
am I sufficiently motivated for the task? Is I think another major component of this.
I wonder too, like, well, it's probably patterning, right? Your nervous system knows this is what we do now. We turn up a bit, we train, and then we go down. It's I forget what that's called, but really it's your body's anticipating what comes next. And it's what comes next is we find energy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just view it as what is the consequence of not doing it. That's basically it. That's the only
Yeah,
time
right.
like for me to be able to relax, there has to be like a perceived lack of consequence to me not doing whatever I'm doing. And in this stage of my life, most of the time, there is a extreme perceived consequence to me not being conscious.
Mm, yeah. Well, and I guess there's so many different paths of that too, right? There's financial responsibility and then there's like life uh what do you call that? Life positive continuing, right? For
Staying
everybody
alive.
involved. Yeah. That's right. The song Staying Alive comes on
Exactly.
immediately.
It is wild to like hit a certain age bracket and then like because the idea of like letting a kid be a kid and like letting
Mhm.
like have them be like carefree for as long as humanly possible because the older you get the more you're aware of the world, of your surroundings, of the way that everything works around you, the responsibilities, things that make sure the wheels keep like turning in motion. The more you understand that, the more like, oh my god, this shit is barely being held together. And it's
Yeah.
like it will probably never fall apart, but you're like, it's because there's more people like me now that are actually aware of what's going on and less people that are like childlike, whimsical, just like life is fantastical. It's like, no, there's a bunch of people doing responsible things that are making sure the society doesn't fall apart. And the older you get, the more you're like, oh, where's gas come from? How does
Right.
food work? How does my water system work? Oh, I gotta take care of this house. What if I didn't do any maintenance on this thing? Oh, well, in 10 years it'll probably fall apart. Then I don't have a house. Oh, wow. I can't just go to the park and fuck off for 4 hours and come home for dinner. It's like I have to, it goes back to what I was saying about being able to relax. Like, yo, oh, there's so many different things necessary for me to actually switch off now that I can't perceive. There's a 25-year, I think I said this on the previous podcast, but there's like a 25-year timetable for I can't die until this kid is up and self-sufficient, plus kid two if we go down that route.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know if I'll be able to relax up until and including that point.
Well, and I remember, well, I'm talking to shallow, but I know what comes to mind is my grandfather too. But I have that vision of the old man sitting on the couch falling asleep after dinner, right? And the age of that man can be anywhere from
Mhm.
probably 30 to 70, right? Depending on the person. But like as a kid, there was definitely somebody sleeping on the couch after each meal. And that is the vision of like, that is now becoming us.
That's 100% me. Like the second I have any time available, like it's the paradox of what I was saying. Like I can't, but the body wants to, and it's just a constant struggle. I'll get into conversations whenever my wife and I are able to like tag team a particular like wake window for the kiddo. Around noon is my hard crash because like I
Mhm.
am highly caffeinated. Sleep isn't necessarily deprived, but like quality of sleep and caffeination, they're at odds with each other at all times. So like in my life is good, but it's like kind of juggling certain things.
Mhm.
Noon rolls around. I've been up since 4. I've probably done like 2 different jobs plus raising the child plus whatever else I'm helping out with or doing. Noon rolls around. I go for the first major caffeine crash, and just every system just wants to go.
Mhm.
The kid just woke up. I shouldn't say the kid. My son just
My
woke
son,
up.
yeah, the
My
one
son
in
just woke
the
up. But it's like, okay, so now, as we were saying too before, I can't shut off. And it's just
Mhm.
a mortal combat of like my body trying to immediately shut me down and me just force of will staying awake so I can make sure that he doesn't fall down a flight of stairs or like crack his head on something.
Right. He's up and walking now?
He's close. He's able to
Close, yeah.
climb up on basically anything. If it's like a step, easy. If it's a flat wall, so he can like wall walking into a standing
Mhm.
position now. Um, he's teething hard. Like he's got 2 bottoms. His third is just poking through now, and this is the one that's hell. Like it's actually causing issues for him. So
Sure.
today is a day for him. Is basically what I'm getting at.
He's yeah, learning about new sensations in the body.
Well, it's wild because like you go from just being gums, and then all of a sudden you go through massive pain. For some kids, probably the most pain they've ever had. For my
Mhm.
kid, I would argue, he's been through some shit. Probably not the
Yeah,
worst pain he's ever had, but it's pretty suck ass.
yeah.
But then you realize, oh, I have weapons in my mouth because I'm going to go from trying to gum my Cheerios to death to, oh, I got knives in my mouth now. Sick. And hopefully that means his feedings will go a little bit better because he's being an asshole lately with his solids, which I've read is completely normal, but it's like he just goes up, down, up, down. Like I will eat everything as though I'm Kirby and just inhale it, or
Mm.
I'm gonna like basically slap it out of your hand. I'm gonna take it with my hand and throw it. Like it just hates everything. He turns into a hater at random.
Well, and I think that's, uh, who's the famous, astrophysicist guy? There's a meme about him all over the place,
Oh,
but
Neil
he
deGrasse Tyson probably.
yeah, he talks about, with children and learning and stuff. And it's I don't know if I agree with this, but anyways, in finding like a plant, if there's a potted plant, and then most parents will say, "Oh, don't throw that on the ground or whatever." He says, "Well, when you throw that on the ground, there's a science experiment happening. The thing explodes on the floor, it makes the
Mhm.
transfer of energy." Interestingly enough, I guess that's one way to learn how the world works. It's like when you throw everything, it breaks, but I don't really know if that's the best way to go about it. You're just breaking shit all the time,
Dude,
but
it's the worst, especially when you have like pets, because so basically my thought process on it is the faster I can get him physically developed, the faster he'll mentally develop because he'll have more exposure to more of the world. Like if he's able to
yeah.
crawl, if he's able to stand, to move, he'll have easier access to things, be able to expose himself to these different experiences, and then all of a sudden his brain will make little connections, and we have a kid that's getting more and more developed. But then, as you said, you have those moments where okay, I just need to let him struggle and he'll learn. Or I
Mhm.
guess release, let him throw the food, let him throw whatever it's going to be. He may not look like it, but his little brain is parsing this. He's learning some stuff. He's not conscious necessarily of it, but he's observing it. It's happening.
Mhm.
But then it's like, oh yeah, I gotta clean this up, or he's gonna literally break something, or it's a danger, or it's a pain in my ass, or whatever. And you're just in this grappling match.
Yep.
of how would I treat this if an adult did this? Oh, wait, he's my baby. So
Yeah.
he gets a
It's
pass
well,
on literally everything, but like,
yeah. It's it because it's almost everyone else we see day to day are adults. And so the lens with which we see them is very different than a child. However, like, okay, baby. Yes. And as you said, the spectrum of is this a low cost replacement if it breaks? Is there a danger to him or others? If the answers are like it's cheap and not really, smash the thing, man. It's fun. Can't put it past them. Smashing shit's fun sometimes.
that's our floors. Like we have engineered hardwoods upstairs. We have LVP down here for like the gym and everything like that. So LVP is the who
Yeah.
gives a shit, and it's like immortal. But the engineered hardwoods, like, don't get me wrong, I've dinged them up enough myself by accident. So I'm not guilt free on this. But like, he's crawling around, got a couple of toys in his hand. Every stride is just a slam, and I'm
Reg.
like, oh, I mean, I'll have to replace those if we move, but that's fine. This is now it's got character. It's lived in.
Yeah, whatever. It's the family home.
Exactly.
I'm wondering too, just to kind of bring things on to topic, I guess something that came to mind in terms of like day to day now. I'd like to talk about one hurdles day to day, both with yourself and then with clients. And so I'm wondering for you, what's something that you found to be like front burner that you're wanting to change or are currently working through to improve in your day to day?
I mean, there's a struggle, like a constant struggle with some semblance of stability, like in a operational schedule. So for me, like I said, like the 4 a.m. window might sound psychopathic to other people, but 4 till about 6, it's like this dead space to the universe where most humans are asleep, but my wife and my child, for the most part, are usually asleep, aside from every once in a while, like random wake up, whatever.
Hmm.
So if I just get up and power caffeinate, like just hit it, that's a massive amount of productivity I can get out of the way before the remainder of the day starts. So I can get a bunch of my writing assignments in, any of my personal writing for social media, organization of my business. On like one day a week, I'll do all my major programming, so that'll get knocked out in that little window. So that's one prong of it. But then there's the rolling aspect of what I do for a living, like so personal training online, book and in person, receiving video technique videos and things like that for feedback, any questions from clients. Before, it was like the second I would get it, it was very easy for me to be able to respond at the drop of a hat whenever. And sometimes that's less possible now, primarily because I don't want to be holding a phone in front of my son at all times.
Yeah.
He already reaches for technology things because it's impossible to not sort of notice things. But we're very cognizant of that. So as much as I can, it's those periodic moments in the day where I can get back to them. But then I'm fighting like new parent dementia, basically. Like you have so many things going on at the same time: household chores, the child's needs, your needs, trying to survive sleep deprivation. And then you get a notification with the client, something like that. And it's just the moment where you check it to make sure it's not like a literal fire. And then you put it down, having cleared that notification unwittingly, and then completely forgetting it ever existed and being like, well, there goes my professional credibility right there, because all of a sudden I used to respond to Bill in 30 seconds. Now maybe it'll be 2 days later and he's like, hey man,
Mm.
your shit on your website says within 24 hours. Like I saw it and I'm sorry, like that kind of stuff. It's so trying to figure out, like, are there now, instead of being amongst my clients at least known for like very rapid, almost sometimes in real time turnaround on questions or technique stuff, so they could so a lot of times they would implement things literally between sets.
Hmm.
Is there a time of day where, okay, in the morning I have that stretch where I can be super productive? Is there another pocket of time where I can basically clear all notifications, and then respond to clients and things of that nature? The other prong of that is the ability to strike while the iron's hot. So a lot of what I do is borderline all of what I do is very mentally engaging. It's very mentally demanding, either through a
Hmm.
creative writing process or through just any form of articulation to clients or engagement otherwise. When you're exhausted and like permanently on, it can get hard when you're handed certain things. Like I wrote for Barbend this morning, I wrote about Pilates. I've done Pilates exactly 0 times in my life, at least
Yeah.
willingly or at least knowingly. But I have a grasp of it. But and honestly, that article, it went pretty smooth, all things considered. Whereas if it was something like Okay, let's train arms. Cool. I can knock that out in my sleep backwards, upside down, in like
Yeah.
3 ways from yesterday. It's fine. But you'll get presented with these opportunities or these challenging assignments or whatever, where unless you're like switched on and ready to go, it's going to be a drag to get through. So between the struggle of trying to figure out the new systems to stay on top of my old systems, and then also, okay, if I have deadlines or timelines, I have this old schedule I used to adhere to, but sometimes now with the brain melt that goes on from being permanently on, it might not be the best way of going about it. So kind of like experiencing it in real time. How do I reformat things? Clients are gangsters, man. Clients don't give a shit. Clients are the best. Like it's a
Mm,
lot of it's the pressure that I put on myself. Like you and everyone else that I train has never once given me any shit about anything. I'd like to say that I'm still pretty on it, but like like for the most part, it's like, hey, no rush. And then they almost get mad at me when I turn it around within like 20 minutes. Like they understand that my life has dramatically changed, but it's the reconciliation of this is still a profession and there's an expectation of you handed me money, and that expectation is devoid of any consideration of my personal life. That's not how
mhm,
businesses work. Like I'm a business entity as well as a personal entity that they happen to be aware of.
mhm. Yeah, well, and I think too, like, working with primarily adults, or if not solely adults, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
Like, we are very much aware that life is happening at all times, right? And the reality of it is, like, if I'm training today and I have a question about today's workout, I'm not going to do that workout again for most of a week, if not a week. So a turnaround at time of 20 minutes or 2 days doesn't make any difference to me because I'm not doing it for another 5, 6, 7, 8 days anyway. Right. So, yes, in between sets, okay, that makes sense. But otherwise, if the workout's done, I don't give a shit if you get back to me today or not. Like, hey, man, been busy. Good. I hope things are going well, man. I've been busy too. You know, like, and that's, I guess, the client relationship that you look for and clearly are successful in having. You cultivate that, and that's not an accident.
Yeah. I guess one of the more challenging aspects is the new intakes that you
Mm,
don't have that relationship with. I'm also at an inflection point in my career, a very strange one where there are people coming out of what seems to be the woodwork. I had the referral from Chelsea slash you not long ago,
mhm,
where Lisa, otherwise will remain nameless, she's a new client, and we're in like probably the first 2 3 weeks of programming, and that's a very to me it's a very important time for relationship building and communication and like sorting out the coach client relationship, what works best for everybody. And so the neuroticism is particularly high there where, oh my God, am I going to lose this person within the first 4 weeks because I didn't deliver what I conceptualize as the product quality that I would expect.
mhm.
Whereas I've gotten no grief again from anybody at any point in time. And then there's the ones that are coming legitimately out of the woodwork. Within the last probably 2 months, I've had a handful of people contact me, seemingly almost cold approach style. And then you like do some sleuthing, some backtracking, or you just straight up ask and like, oh hey, like where did you actually come across either my website or my information? And then you figure it out, but it's still a relatively cold lead or cold approach. Like, okay, how do I approach this? Because there is no leeway. There is no like maybe there is some, but you as the practitioner are at the disadvantage because they will know you more than you know them. So you have
Mhm.
to bridge that ASAP and then develop the relationships to figure out where you stand with this person in terms of all the aforementioned things: communication, leeway, their expectations, your expectations, the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that keeps you on your toes and it shows that you still truly care, right? You're not getting passive in your, experience years. It's like, no, this is still something that I prioritize and I show that to people intentionally. And I hope that that's felt. So, and then clearly it is because client retention, right? That's the age old thing. Not that all retention counts on, reliability. Sometimes life changes, but at the same time, mostly it does. So if people know, like, and trust you, the game continues.
It seems to be the major thing in this industry nowadays. Like, hey, instead of everything else that people got going on, the thing is going to be the method of success. Maybe start with being a good trainer and a good person, and then have people know, like, and trust you, and then you'll probably get pretty far.
Yeah. And it's funny too, like, people don't care as much about training skills as much as they do about the know, like, and trust, I think. And that's one of the good and bad things about fitness in general is you don't have to know much in order to train people. You have to be confident in your presentation. let's say. And outside of that, it's, I don't know. Conceptually, you don't have to
Yeah.
have much knowledge.
The know, like, and trust thing is like it is, in my opinion, and in my experience, way more powerful of a tool of a business success model than having high quality ability to train people, because
Hmm.
that can be trained up. Like the asset of being a solid or even exceptional trainer, it does exponentially improve your client outcomes, which then can be a ripple effect on everything, like their
Hmm.
results, and then your client retention, and therefore other referrals and marketing
Referrals.
tools, obviously. But the ability to be known, liked, and trusted, like not superficially, not whatever facade people like to put out there on social media, because that's the or in any presentation, not to pigeonhole everything to social media, any marketing presentation, but there's an extreme. Although training is literally probably one of the most personal forms of service that you can provide, it is you training another individual. It is not a nameless, faceless entity training another individual. No matter if I'm eBigera Limited or otherwise, it's still me that's training Muscle Bill. It's still me that's training Lisa in the other example. To be genuinely presenting yourself is something that's extremely lost on people, it would seem,
Hmm.
and or people are extremely nervous or neurotic about actually presenting their genuine self under some fear that it's either not going to be good enough, or they're going to get dunked on or roasted by the nameless, faceless internet, or whatever it's going to be. So they lean into, oh, I'm a superior coach or a superior trainer. It's like that doesn't really matter. I almost
Yeah.
guarantee that you're probably not as superior as you think, because it's not that hard of a gig to deliver genuine results to most people. Being
Hmm.
exceptional is still an exceptional service you can provide, but to provide results and service generally, it's not that hard.
Hmm.
So get past the first point, like actually be willing to be a real, genuine human in your interactions, in your presentation. That's probably where the biggest rock to overturn really is.
I'm reminded of a thing. I don't know that I said it first, but I've definitely said it before. Is that you can only meet someone to the depth at which they've met themselves, and it's like a lot of people try to avoid meeting themselves at any particular depth. Uh, I don't know really why. I guess probably a whole bunch of different reasons. Could be some trauma, or could be whatever, right? Nature, nurture, whatever. But having the ability and a certain degree of comfort with those depths of ourselves, I think welcomes it from other people as well. I feel like that's a felt exchange, whether in a client or any relationship in the world, really. I do feel like that's a felt experience for anyone involved. And so that's whether unique or not. I do think that that's a big part of this know, like, and trust. It's the I don't really know why, or I can't articulate why I like this person or why you and I get along, but we do. It's like that's not nothing, right? It's maybe not an easy thing to put words to, but it is something. And it's valuable.
It's because there's no escaping work in any aspect of what you're describing. I've thought about it recently, like people, I think, and this is like just conjecture, obviously, but I think a lot of people have gotten on the therapy train, which is an
Mhm.
extremely valuable thing to pursue. That's a very noble thing to pursue, to like identify if you have anything that you need help with a therapist for, and then to actively engage in it. But I think that it's a lot of people go halfway with it, thinking that okay, I've undertaken the responsible steps. I have engaged with a therapist, not knowing that that's part one. Willingness to truly dig and expose and experience the things that you've either suppressed, repressed, avoided. You're not even cognitively aware that they exist, to like actually actively go through the processes, engage with the human. Like the therapist is a guide. They're designed to help you get to the parts of yourself that you really need to be exposed to. And I think that a lot of people either don't know that, or they go through those motions hoping that just by virtue of getting into therapy, it will resolve itself. And under no circumstance will anything ever resolve itself. And I speak to this as someone that is like probably one of the foremost experts of like struggling to like genuinely, I can have an infinite amount of deep, superficial relationships, if that makes sense, because I am more public domain, because I engage with so many people and as a professional, but also just as a general character trait, like I lead with respect always. So it's very easy for me to make connections with people, and I'm very willing to engage with people on a more deep level. but my ability to fully reciprocate trust, I can put out, I can trust, sorry, I can expose any amount of information about myself because I'm comfortable with the ramifications of that. I'm comfortable with my own self. The things that I've had experiences in my life where I can then anticipate a trusting response or someone to be reliable in response. Those are the things that I struggle with deeply. So I can put out, I can superficially connect. It can seem like I trust you. It can seem like I have all the ability in the world to have deep, meaningful relationships with insert any number of humans. But the reality is the actual amount of people, when you claw back under the subconscious, do I actually trust you? Do I think you're reliable? Do I like I was about to say and I pulled it back, but do I have a deep, meaningful value to this interaction? That may sound a little bit harsh, but I think if people understand or like they look out, they look through all of their most meaningful relationships, they kind of know what that means.
Mhm.
I can be friends with everybody. I can be cordial, I can be respectful, I can be on a superficial basis engaging with everybody. Who do I actually feel genuinely connected to? That's what I struggle with. And to me, that's like a big prong of what therapy or all that work that I was mentioning people don't necessarily engage in.
Mhm.
That's where it's led me. I've really discovered just my own bullshit, for lack of a better term, that has led me down the path of not being able to like have those deep, meaningful connections outside of a very select handful of people.
Yeah, I feel that that definitely feels familiar, in the sense that one of the beliefs that I found I've held for a long time is that when you lean on people, they leave. And that seems like a similar, and I don't mean that to everybody, but like in a general sense on this superficial, deep relationships you're speaking to, like that's exactly what feels to be true. It's like, I know that when shit hits the fan, because inevitably it will in some capacity, I can't rely on you. And that's been shown over time. It's like, and that's fine. That's not really a judgment of here nor there, but it really narrows in the people in your life that you can lean on when it counts. And outside of when it counts, like not really too much else matters, you know? But then one of the other things that I found too is holes in my thinking in terms of like, well, why do I then say put the brakes on from these cultivating more these deeper level relationships with people that I know I can connect to and trust? It's like, well, do I then imply to myself that I'm not confident in my ability to get myself out of something if somebody were to leave once I have relied on them? And that part of it is not true. I have full confidence in myself to be able to do that mental, emotional, like whatever that's called. I can rally the internal troops and fucking get it done because I've done that too. Right. And that's not to say like I have my family has been amazing. My parents are both great. That's caveat. But like in general, outside of family, is that true that I then, worry about my self sufficiency or my ability to not be chronically depressed forever? No, not for 1 second. And so it's a bullshit like hurdle for me to put in front of myself to be like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I just fucking busted myself though. And I don't know. Does any of that resonate with you in the terms of like
Yeah.
an underlying belief system?
Yeah. It's who when the shit inevitably hits the fan, who would I not be annoyed by having to, because like I'm going to do it. It's just a the character trait that I have is I feel responsible, and if someone needs something and they directly ask me, like it's very hard for me to pull back, no matter the magnitude of the situation, right? And
Hmm.
it's not a guilt trip thing. It's not anything. It's like, but if Muscle
No.
Bill contacts me and he needs some shit, Muscle Bill lives in another province. Everybody, we're good friends. We train together with the whole thing. Muscle Bill is someone that I'll be like, fuck, okay, this is now something on my plate that I have to manage now.
Sure.
Like he is in another like right. So the amount of people that I've made a deep, meaningful connection with on that level with, where it'd be an unquestioning, not that I would question with you, but an unquestioning and not even something that rolled off my back or whatever I'm trying to say there. Like not even influenced me at all. Uh Immediate family and one other person being the woman that I married.
Hmm.
Now my son obviously as well. But it's like it's such a difficult thing, and it comes from I was thinking about this too as I was like absorbing what you were saying, and it's because I have I don't have an issue. That's not the right way of phrasing it, but people are flawed. Everyone is flawed.
Mhm.
And I have a subconscious difficulty separating said flaws from just being outright disappointed or expectation management or whatever I'm
Mhm.
trying to say here of the human, right? Because I only know my moral compass, my decision making processes, and the things that I'm going to go through. Anything that escapes these ears and this skull, this head, this brain, this whatever, I don't know ultimately the way that anyone else thinks. And that's something that as I've aged, you really come to grips with. You're like, oh, wait, people think in their own ways, which is completely fine. But at that stage, there's always going to be this shield that protects you from ever knowing truly what someone else thinks or what their actions might be. And
Mhm.
so you basically go through a series of life tests where you then have the people that you may have instilled some trust within or gleaned trust from them and so on and so forth. You go through a series of life events that tests it gives you evidence as to how they think or how they operate. And more often than not, all of us, not just me, we're going to be disappointed because we likely will be superimposing our own internal moral compass or our
Mhm.
own internal thought processes upon another human that we had no reasonable, rational reason to do that to.
Yep.
Then you're disappointed in the response that they had no reason to give or no reason not to give, and then all of a sudden you're like spiraling, like, oh, I don't really know this person. Is this person even worth engaging with? All kind of shit. So people are inherently flawed, and no one's going to think exactly the way you do, and they can think actually diametrically opposed to the way you do, and that could be okay
Mhm.
because you don't need everyone to. Not every single person needs to be the exact same, and not every single person, nor any person, really is going to be exactly like you. That's something that took a while to really realize. It's like, oh, people see the world through a different way. People think a different way. Okay, that's fine. You can still engage with them. You can still try to develop some sort of meaningful relationship with people. But that's where I've grappled with historically.
Mhm. It's I to gamify that similar concept to myself, it's people do people things. And that's like I don't know how I'm going to act a month from now, per se. And so to try to pretend that I might have an idea of how you might act or how you might be thinking, like all of these variables just exponentially compound when you include another person, let alone just ourselves. And so then to me, it just all becomes kind of silly. It's like, well, why? And that's expectation management and energy allocation are two lenses. I think I talked about it in the collective thing I did a bit, but
Mhm.
it's like, this is all on me. Why did I have that expectation to begin with? Well, probably projection, and nobody else knew about it but me. That seems kind of silly, right? And so we let ourselves down all the time. And so, but then to be able to turn that around is to lighten the load or to lighten the impact. It's like, yeah, fuck. Well, third party language is kind of what I do. Think, come on, self, we did it again. You think, I know, I really have my hopes up this time. Think, I know. But then you have empathy for yourself. And it's this whole sort of self joke in my mind that I guess maybe it sounds like a crazy person. I don't know. But that's how I think sometimes. It's just like, well, that was all kind of silly. And then it's like, yeah, it really was. Well, noted for next time in terms of what I may expect someone else that I probably don't know anything about or very little. Right. It's like, put it into perspective in terms of like, they're just a person living life, man. Life's hard enough. No, I'm not trying to make anybody's life harder.
It's 100% correct. It's like I was, how often do you, the selection of people that you know, which is probably pretty expansive, in any given day, in any of the small amounts of random time that you have to just think and just exist, where does your mind wander? And so most people like will live holding their breath, hoping that whatever relationship they're trying to cultivate, like, oh, this person's thinking of me, or they're going to send a text, they're going to do X, they're going to do Y. And it's like they aren't thinking about you.
Mhm.
And that's not a positive or negative statement. It's that people all have occupied brains on whatever the problems of their current situation, their life, whatever things that are the immediate threat to their existence, whatever any of that is. That's the things preoccupying most of their brain space.
Mhm.
To be able to have that kind of thought process is a luxury because it means you have spare time and that you have a preoccupation with something that isn't an immediate threat to your person. Success. You have one life. You're
Yeah.
more concerned with what someone else thinks or if they're thinking about you in any way, shape, or form than any of the things that might be happening in your current life right now. You've got that time to breathe and to collect yourself. Sick. That doesn't to mean that you're not important to someone else. That doesn't mean that there isn't something there that's worth cultivating. It's like you use the phrase expectation management in your last sort of talk there, and it's that's really all it is. It's
Mhm.
projection and superimposing things upon another person that has no idea what you're thinking or what you're doing, and then being disappointed in the result that was never going to happen anyways.
Yeah. And then to add the layer of, and then probably never tell them about that at all.
Yeah, and the resentment that comes with that, eh?
It's, yeah. Well, and that's where it all becomes kind of silly. It's like if I expect you to say something to me or react a certain way, and then you don't, and then I feel all weird about it or upset, and then I'm like, well, now I've just changed my opinion about Eric forever, and I'll never tell him or bring it up or say, hey, man, I feel a little disappointed. And you'd be like, oh, like what's going on? Tell me more and try to reconcile or bring it up. Whereas it's like there's so many pieces of a broken equation that are not terribly difficult to improve upon. And it's just a matter of someone, I think I said this in the last couple podcasts, but nobody wants to go first. And so it almost always has to be us. Like it's whether it's me or it's you, or whoever the person is in the situation, just fucking go first. Say, hey, put yourself on the line a little bit and say, Eric, you know what? I'm a little disappointed in this. See how that's landed. Because either way, even if you're like, you know what, man, fuck you. I know I'm good. Be like, all right, well, Eric's in that. He's having a tough day. I'm not going to be like, yeah, you know what? Fuck you too. Like, maybe Eric hasn't slept in 3 days and I'll check in with him and maybe tomorrow to see if he's doing okay. Right. Or locally, maybe I'll bring him a coffee tomorrow. Right. Like this is where my mind goes instead of like,
Damn,
you know
grease
what?
the
Fuck
wheels.
him. Yeah. Like
Well,
it's
that's
probably a hard time.
in the almost 9 months that we've been raising our son together. Like that's something that has actually been pretty salient in even like I mentioned, the closest relationship I have in my life, my wife, the most unthinking, trusting relationship I have. Oh, we need to be explicit. And that's something that people need more and more to realize is that in any relationship, in any dynamic, you need to be much more explicit in your needs or in anything that you're trying to relay or your expectations or anything like that
Mhm.
with the person that you're trying to cultivate a relationship with, primarily because people are mind readers. And like I said earlier, their brain space is actually occupied by all their immediate issues or all their immediate problems that probably don't include you. Especially if you're generally speaking not a problem.
Yeah.
You're occupying even less space because good
Yeah.
news, no news is good news in that respect. So what we came to realize, like even recently, like we had a moment where it was like, oh, I'm performing this behavior because I thought you would appreciate it. Oh, it's the literal opposite impact. I apologize. Not to do with it. Literally was something like I'm watching our son,
Mhm.
and my wife has those precious moments to do like a meal prep or something like that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, all right, let's go see what your mom's up to. And I just carry him into the kitchen, and she's like, please no. Like it just this moment of a silence, this moment of relaxation, of being off the clock
Me
to do
time.
whatever. The fear is if he's crawling around on the floor, like stumbling over him, stuff like that, like right. And the approach I took is like, cool, we can all hang out together. I still have him. You're off the clock, but we can all still mingle as family and just enjoy the interaction and enjoy the experience. And she's like, very fair. And I will expressly state that I have these moments too. It's like, no, I just need like a handful of minutes of just alone in my, even if it's in a chore, just alone. I'm like, oh, cool. I came from a good place and I was completely fucking up. I apologize. And you're not a
Yeah.
bad parent for needing that. And neither am I. And I think that, but we just need to be literally explicit in what it is.
Yeah.
Because even those moments, again, the person I trust the most, the person that trusts me the most, we have the deepest relationship, basically an unthinking communication to this stage. Oh, sick. I completely misread what your needs were.
Mhm.
Just state everything as explicitly as humanly possible, and you'll probably get a lot further.
Well, and it deepens your connection. Also, the know, like, and trust. Like all
Mhm.
of these things improve with each step of the process. And actually I think we talked about it the last time too, is this sense of like a longing for deeper level connection, which is interesting. I didn't even think about this yet, but accessing that is so much more available to everyone just by being more explicit in our needs, in our wants, in our thoughts or whatever, right? It's our expectations. And I don't know. Yeah. We break our own hearts, man. I feel like it's a love song somewhere and I don't know
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah.
It's a very interesting time for to be raising a son, primarily because I look at the way I grew up and the way that I was able to interact with people on a daily basis because technology didn't exist. There wasn't like a screen separating
Yeah.
everybody. So I came from before the internet, before computers really were popular in each and every household. had my friendships, had my relationships, and then everything came in, and then now I've spent most of my adult life and teenage life on computers, on the internet, interacting with other people. But I still have the skill set of both. And it's
Yeah.
something that as we do, say, pre-script events or anything really, if I were to meet someone from the online space in person, one of the number one things we would always hear is that we're the same person online as we are in person. And it would always startle me that that was a thing, except it also wouldn't, because I've also met other people from the online space that are a complete, either they melt under the spotlight, quote unquote, of just
Mm.
being in front of a real person again. Like they can't uphold whatever demeanor or whatever like persona they had in the online space behind a screen, or it was completely just a fabrication to begin with. So growing up in this space, like how do people meet people anymore? How
Mm.
do people interact? How do they make friends? How do they do all these things? Because school is going to be a big one. Workplaces, assuming it's not an online workplace, that's going to be a big one still. But it gets me thinking. It gets me interested. Not concerned per se, because the world will always change, but interested in. We had it so much easier because we
Mm.
weren't constantly, literally boxed in by screens that were separating true human connection.
Yeah, I don't, and one thing that's way more prevalent now is fucking kidnapping, man. Like it just is. People, it's we when I was a kid, I could bike around town and it never crossed my mind that someone might pull up in a car and try to rip me off my bike and take me away. Now, even where I am, like there it literally is happening. Like there are attempts in this, like it's crazy the difference in the world today. And so then it's yes, screens are a huge part of that and technology, whatever. Obviously, that landscape is different. However, there's also this whole other piece of like safety and like I wouldn't want my kid to be on their bike by themselves until they're like fucking 18, you know? Because if some, I don't want to have what's that movie Taken? I don't want to go all fucking Liam, whatever his name is, and like now I gotta do some bad shit if I can, you know. But in reality, if it
Yeah.
is, you probably wouldn't be able to because you never fucking find them. So
That's I think about that actually quite a lot too, because I'm of the same age bracket where it's like, oh cool, yeah, it's the weekend. I'm gonna grab my bike, just vanish for 12 hours, come back for food, and just, yeah,
yeah,
this is the way it was.
how's your day?
Now I'm like, as an adult with a child, I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to trust this child to vanish and not like get hit by a car, let alone someone
Yeah.
pull up and try to do whatever. Same with we have a it's like a walking school bus that goes past our place every morning for school.
Mhm.
And it's like sick. That's an awesome thing. Like helps
Yeah.
keep kids safe and helps them get used to like more responsibility getting to school on their own, stuff like that. And I'm like, oh wait, yeah. So at a certain age, we just trust him. We just shove him into society and just be like, thank you, society. Keep him safe
Yeah.
while I'm not actively watching him. Like it's just a normal part of growing up. And it's like, wow, the amount of trust I'm delivering my son to with strangers. Like it's insanity.
Yeah. Well, and I think I've seen in Japan, like the children ride the subway by themselves and stuff. And it's just culturally, I believe mostly North America, just it seems to just be this I don't know if it's a vacuum, but it's definitely unique in a lot of ways, like similar to European healthcare includes more holistic wellness and all these other aspects, whereas North American and westernization, it does not. It's like pills and surgeries. Like, yeah, but I don't think that that's for the better, you know? And similar to this, it's like, no, I don't know. The danger of being on your own, and even as an adult, man, in cities, I don't like walking around downtown cities anymore either. And I'm a fucking 38 almost year old male, not a small guy, but I don't want to deal with any of that fucking stuff. Like homeless people approaching and guys wanting to like, no thanks. No
Like how
interest.
that changed. Like how that changed like over almost overnight, maybe the last couple of years. Same because like I was thinking about it, the ignorance is bliss sort of
Yeah.
thing. Cause like I grew up, I bought my first car when I was like 29 or something. I was just on
Hmm.
public transit the whole time because there was like a layout of the city that would match my work schedule or whatever. So I did okay, I'll get my apartment, I'll do whatever. I allocated the resources elsewhere and I didn't even have it in my brain that I could afford it till my wife, girlfriend at the time, fiance at the time, can't remember timelines here. But she was like, yo, this is dumb. Like you don't need to be like up at like 5 in the morning on a bus to do personal training things. Like we can And I was like, oh wait, I can finance this. It. Oh my god, I can afford a car. Holy shit, my life is going to change. I had no idea because it was just not a thing that I really cared about because I had
Yep.
my systems in place. But
Hmm.
now looking at okay, so at age 13, I've been on public transit my entire life since then. And again, you look at like, I'm going to put my kid on a bus. I'm going to put him on some of them. I'm going to do the local circuit here because I know it and I know the area and stuff like that. And he needs the experience of independence and stuff like that too. It's not to coddle the child. Like he's got to interact with society, interact
Sure.
with life, obviously. But I'm like, oh, I downtown Winnipeg. I worked downtown Winnipeg at like age 18, and like just would bus to the city center and be like, wow, this seems sketchy. Well, better go to work and just go straight through it for a number of years. And then all of a sudden you get to a certain age. Again, it's the age bracket where you start to become more
Yeah.
aware of what's your surroundings, how things work, everything's going down, or all the shit that's gone sideways or whatever's happening. And you're like, wow, that's always been there, hasn't it?
Yeah. Not much has
Yeah.
changed. It's just now how I perceive it and will continue to engage with it is now different. Yes. Oh, well, and so something that came to mind in that is updating the systems. How often would you say, or I guess in thinking of your own life, what have the major system upgrades been? Public transit is one that you just mentioned there, but like maybe on a more broad spectrum, in terms of life lessons or in terms of like the software updates in our thinking. What comes to mind when you think about that?
Well, I just turned 35, so that was like it was a weird point of reflection because typically, like anything past 25, I just stopped giving a shit. 30 was cool because oh my god, I'm 30.
Mm,
But like, it was a point of self reflection because like, okay, I'm 35. It's a hard out to consider myself not an adult at this point. There's a very hard sell to be like, no, you're an adult at this point. Like you're no longer a kid. And it was the finer point on that was obviously I got married, got a house, have a child of my own. Like you're an adult. And so that's where you start to really, again, reflect on some of the finer points that you're speaking to, like some of the changes that you've made over the course of your young adulthood to the point now. And the big one is just, again, it circles back to the responsibility. Like the buck always lands with someone, and
mm,
who has been the point of stability and the point of like responsibility within your life up until that point when you make the transition to, oh, I'm an adult. And perhaps even now I am that person for others. So for me, like the major systems updates, major line of thinking is I've always been risk averse, which is hilarious because my entire career is one giant risk, but it's like the least risky version of risk
yeah.
taking that I can. And so that's pretty much the model of everything just turned up to 11 now. Because I have a child, I have a wife, I have property, I have a lot of things that are valuable and high risk to lose and things like that, primarily the safety and security of my loved ones, but also now the future of my loved ones, things that you never really considered necessarily for yourself. Like smart people do. They're like, oh, my future. But then when you have dependents, you're like, oh, everyone's future, like financially, safety and security, food sometimes, their education. Like, okay, what are all these moving parts that never used to be things that I had to think about because I had someone else that was thinking about it for me? Those are the major upgrades, like figuring out how do I future proof my son's life? How do I make sure that he has a safe and secure upbringing? Are we going to move? What am I doing to my home? Things like that.
Hmm.
I can't remember if we spoke, you and I have ever spoken about this. Maybe it was on the last podcast, but when I bought this house for my parents and then we did a full renovation of the place. And essentially the day I took possession, like they took all their shit the prior night, moved, and it was like moving truck, the whole thing. I got the keys next morning, 9 in the morning. So I guess people nearby in slightly, sketchier areas, perhaps, I don't know, they had been watching and just sort of seen, okay, moving truck, no vehicles in the back. This is the moment. It was a crime of opportunity, but they kicked the door in and then
Hmm.
tried to raid an empty home, which
Sure.
sucks everybody involved because like they took a massive risk for doing criminal acts for no reason, and I just had my door kicked in for no reason as well.
Yeah.
uh but it became a very salient point in my entire life. It's like, okay, cool, so that's a very that either was a break and enter or it could have been a home invasion depending on the context of the time when it happened.
Mm.
Cool. That door, especially with my wife living here with me. Now that we have a kid, we got two cats, we got things I care about. Oh, that door is kick in proof. You
Yeah.
will lose your limb trying to get through that. You need a battering ram or a fucking wrecking ball to knock that thing in now. Cause it's like that was the investment I made. I was like, that thing's not coming down. a couple security cam, things like that, like just things
Oh
that
yeah.
are mass deterrents, right? Because when it was just me, I was like, I mean, that door's not the most secure in the world. It's got a deadbolt, it's fine. Oh, someone broke in. Cool, I have a kid. And like you said, Liam Neeson, if something were to go down,
Hmm.
oh, there's no real alternative to me just shit kicking this entire situation or getting shit kicked. Like that's
Yeah.
where it's going to end up. You just,
Yeah.
your brain does those things. You start to trace forward every possible scenario and you can't unthink them. You can't undo those sort of thought processes. You enter a situation or you just theory craft what is the worst or the best or what all the outcomes that could possibly happen. Oh, it all just ends with me.
Yeah.
It's just me. That's just how it ends every
That's
single
it.
time.
Well, just as I said earlier, it's nobody wants to go first. It's got to be you. It's like it does almost always have to be you, right? Because who else? And it's not even a fault of anyone else. It's like who else is literally there, right? If you're home alone, if anybody's home alone, even if you don't live alone, but if you're home alone, where's the responsibility lie? It's on you,
Yep.
right? And so if you don't want to do it, it's like, well, it's not going to get done. Like it's a bad
Dude,
spot, especially in
the
that situation.
I grew up real fast. Not that I wasn't an adult at the time, but I grew up real fast after that event.
Hmm.
Because okay, that was kick my door in. Cool. I'm gonna contact the contractor that we are probably gonna hire anyways. He's gonna come in on a Saturday, and he's my homie for life now. Because he came in on a Saturday and like reinforced the door as much as he could, like basically free of charge. Because he's cool like that. But
Yeah.
then after that point, I was like, well, someone's already done it. So I'm not interested in getting like squatters or someone doing it again or thinking there's stuff in here. So cool. Now until the renovation starts slash finish, I'm just gonna camp out here on an air mattress with a baseball bat
Yep.
and stack like my shitty childhood weights against this door that's barely held up. And like that's gonna be my sleeping experience or my lived experience for like the next, I don't know, a couple months.
Yep.
Like that. And that was like the beginning of that thread being pulled. Like, oh, cool. I mean, it's buck's got to stop somewhere. So I
Yeah.
guess this is all my responsibility now. Sick.
Well, and one of the things the internet has done is it's kind of made people forget that violence is still real. And not only on TV in different countries and places that, unfortunate things, but like in your fucking front yard. And that's at the end of the day, like, well, that's, rented from Joel. That's uh violence capable. It's like everybody's got a line. And like whether or not you're capable or not, sometimes that line comes and it's like, fuck, man, it's intense. And I hope that it never does. Right. And for myself included, but it's like, what is the line for you? And that's knowing that about myself is really, it's kind of a comfort because anything less than that line feels like a non-issue. It's like, oh, I know I'm not going to engage. I'm not, because I don't care. I don't care enough to, and I know that because I know exactly where that stop line is like, oh no, you fucked up now.
Yeah. It's something that I think any logical, responsible adult goes through at some stage is you realize again, like you hope for the best. I've never actively been in a confrontation of any sort of extreme magnitude before. Great. Hang my hat on that.
Mhm.
However, I'm not ignorant. I'm not a child anymore. I do understand that, oh, if shit were to go down, as you said, it's like you strike first and you strike fast.
Yep.
And that's not me talking shit, being like, I'm going to kung fu kid the fuck out of someone and be
No,
like,
I'm going to do what I can.
no, I'm probably going to get wrecked because I haven't done any sort of combat training, self defense training. I haven't done contact sports since I was a teenager.
Mhm.
I am 6 foot tall and somewhat imposing. That's the deterrent. But if
Dude.
shit were to go down, it's like, there's no other alternative. And as you said, you do everything in your power, both pre-planning, deterrence. You be a very even-headed person. Don't jump
Mhm.
at things. Make sure that you're avoiding them at all costs. But you always have to go through again that thought experiment of when that kill switch has to happen.
Ugh.
Kill switch is a metaphor, everybody. But like, okay,
Yeah.
what is the thing that you have to be prepared to do because you
Mhm.
don't know how any situation will go down, and it's an uncomfortable thought experiment. It's also an uncomfortable conversation, probably in today's society as well, because it's something that outside of again the camera effect of everybody like the second shit goes down in real life,
Yeah.
everybody's just behind their camera to film it, as opposed to just realizing what's happening and either
Yeah.
helping or doing something about it. But at some stage, like you have to be prepared for, hey, something of chaos might actually happen,
Mhm.
and you're going to have to be able to actually do something about it. If someone were to break into this house, I have already looked at Canadian laws for like, okay, where's the line?
Yeah.
Because it's like if there's other people at risk, I'm going to the line immediately. Like that line,
Yeah.
and depending on what the situation is, I'll leap the fuck over that line and accept the consequences because
Hmm.
like the other side of the consequences are someone I care about is potentially at risk.
Yep.
And it's a very like dark,
It's got to be you.
intertwined bunch of thought process, but
Hmm.
like you can't say it enough. You hope nothing happens, but you have to be
No.
prepared.
Yeah. I was on a date in Windsor one time, and it's funny. Well, and especially after meeting Shallow and Killian from Windsor and whatever, sketchy town, border town, right? Not great. But I was down with a group of women and me getting pizza in like 2 in the morning, right? I wasn't drinking, sober guy, big mistake, downtown Windsor. Anyway, across the street, big group of men. I'm the only guy with a big group of women. Big mistake for me.
Yeah.
All the women start yelling at the men. They're like, oh, fuck you guys, whatever. What are you going to do? Guess what all the men did? They yelled at me. Like, yeah, now I'm fucked because you have a loudmouth and you're all drunk and I'm not. And I wish I didn't come. Right. But then unfortunately, the pizza shop owner came running out in the street with his son with a fucking baseball bat. And like everybody settled down and fucked off. But that was an immediate fuck up on my end. I'm like, I'm not doing that again. Downtown city
Yeah.
time. No, thank you. I'm good.
I've lived enough life, thankfully without major issue, but I still have a healthy respect for again ramifications, consequences.
Oh,
Like I have a pretty good radar for how things could go sideways super fast, and that's something that I think a lot of people have not had this. They've had a similar experience with me where they haven't been directly involved in a lot of conflict or a lot of violence, but they don't have that healthy respect for it, and they don't
yeah.
realize like just be like a big one is like parking lot disputes,
Hmm.
road rage, things like that. Like, oh, you think because you're behind this little small like pane of glass that either people can't see the way you're acting towards them or that people can't react to the way that you're acting towards them. Oh, that's silly.
Yeah.
That's incredibly silly. Because there was a point in time where we were parking downtown Winnipeg is a event. It's a place called the Forks for us. It's like it's literally the crossing of two of our rivers, and it's a point of like major, like hipstery. I don't know, if hipstery is the right word, but either way, it's a pretty crowded place, pretty popular place, right?
Mm.
Parking can be a clusterfuck, and it was just somebody took a spot and somebody was basically melting off behind the wheel, and I'm like, cool, could you not do that?
Hmm.
Because you're the one doing it. They're gonna see me,
Hmm.
and I'm a more immediate threat in this situation, although you're the one that's instigating. So if you could not, that'd be
Yeah.
great. Like, because if anything were to go down, I had nothing to do with this, but now I have everything to do with this. And it's like,
Hmm.
again, it's the ripple effect of people not having that experience of when shit actually goes down, how would it actually go down? There's a
Hmm.
ton of crossfire all the time. Like
Oh
your
man.
your actions always have consequences.
So this kind of brings me into a question that I think, forgot to ask pretty much everybody, but here we are. In thinking of one of, let's say, the more difficult experiences you've had in life, what did you find yourself leaning into for strength?
Oh, good lord! I think the bills still coming due, dude. Like because the last time I was on, we talked about the most readily available experience was like the birth of my son,
Yes.
because we went through a long labor where my wife then had to have an emergency C-section because my son's heart rate dropped a couple of
Hmm.
times. During the emergency C-section, son was delivered fine, but my wife's uterus wouldn't actually contract back down to normal, and like there was an issue where she needed to have what I can only perceive as like an emergency, pretty serious procedure. There was a
Yeah.
blood transfusion, the whole thing, like she was hemorrhaging. In those moments, typically what happens to me is I'll just completely dissociate, and I don't mean like be numb and not. No, no, no. I
Yeah.
I completely just go on
Robotic.
autopilot, and typically I'm performing the correct acts. I just psychologically or emotionally dissociate from what's going on, and then perform, and that's thankfully historically been how I go about most things. Like I've dealt with emergency first aid situations, some pretty crazy shit in my career and in my life. And usually the move is just like just autopilot. Like I don't
Yeah.
think I just autopilot, right? And the reason why I say I'm pretty sure that check is gonna come due at some stages because that's a pretty your son might die, sick. Your wife now might die. Okay. And then you're just gonna dissociate. I think that check's eventually gonna come through.
Hmm.
Where I'll actually have to more meaningfully deal with that and like the have some psychological effect of it. But for the most part, it's just that dissociation, like
Hmm.
just complete autopilot, go through the motions, make sure you're doing the actions that you need to be doing to support whatever the situation happens to be.
Hmm.
Because I'm trying to think of any other traumatic ish experiences that I've been through in my life. And typically it's the same result where whatever's going down, whether I'm being threatened, whether something's happening, whether it's a dangerous situation like an accident or anything like that, typically it's just movement. It's
Yeah.
unthinking movement, and somehow the correct thing is being done.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't really know how to explain what that is either, but it definitely seems like a phenomenon in that. Well, and I don't know. Maybe some people don't have that, or I'm sure that they don't. It's because shit does fall apart sometimes, and we don't always know
Yeah.
what to do, and it's always just a crapshoot. And so it may just be a matter of somewhat luck, somewhat intuition or experience or whatever, but the subconscious mind somehow chooses slightly better options uh towards a more positive outcome more times than not. It's like that's yeah, geez. I don't know what that is, but it does seem to be the case,
I
right?
mean, it
It's
probably had like the subconscious reactions probably have a lot to do with the conscious reactions of being like full dad mode, full
yeah,
apparent anytime anything's going down. Like you have like what others would perceive as clairvoyance and I would perceive as just a logical series of events is probably going to
yes,
happen because Bill walking through with a group of women in Windsor at 2 a.m. and then a group of guys walking past. Like you can kind of logically tell, especially in post, as you describe the
yeah,
situation, like, yo, this is a
okay,
bad plan before it even started.
yeah,
That probably drives a lot of your subconscious actions when the shit actually goes down because you've probably played out in your brain, like, why is this a bad idea? Well,
yeah.
because X, Y, and Z are probably going to happen.
Well, and that's just it. Like I was only maybe 25 at the time, but it was very much a case of as soon as we got down there, like, oh, do you want to grab pizza? Sure. And then you get there and you're like, oh, this is a terrible idea. I don't want to get pizza at all. But I'm already in motion, right? What am I gonna do? Sit in the car? I guess I should have probably,
Yeah.
but just gone home. But fuck. It's yeah, it's interesting you bring up clairvoyance versus logical uh series of events in the sense of like I don't really know. Well, I guess I haven't had experience with clairvoyance personally. I do feel like some people have access to something like that. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know that it needs to be explained. Although I also know that, like, let's say you and I could have a perception of something similar. And it's like, how did you know that? It's like, I just fucking did, man. Like, it's not that hard to tell. Right. And so that seems like a unique
Bill,
situational assessment.
I think it's called anxiety and like catastrophization. I think that
Sure.
just pulling on the thread of how might this go in the worst case scenario faster than
So,
other people can parse it in their brain.
so for you, where would you say that comes from?
Probably bad shit happening to either people around me or just I don't like I've been described as a ninny many times in my life, Bill, and I'm like, do you know what happens every time we don't do what I say
Mm,
or what I would suggest? That's not being like,
yeah.
fucking
I'm the
king of the
smartest
world,
man
Eric
ever.
knows everything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like usually when there's a situation where it's like this seems like it's sketchy, what should we do? And we don't do what I suggest. Usually some bad shit happens. It's just again, all I can say is like growing up the way I did, in the areas that I did. I'm in like the nice place of a potentially sketchy city,
Hmm.
being able to like be in it and then come out, be in it and then come out, be like sheltered and then go in it and be like, okay, cool. So this is the world. This is the real world. This is how shit can go down. These are the like some semblance of situational awareness, or healthy respect for other people in their personal space, and so on and so forth. That probably young people don't actually have. It's again, it's like a speed of parsing of information
Hmm.
and just understanding human nature maybe a little bit more than the average person might.
Right. Well, do you think that your career plays a role in that as well? Like in your familiarity with coaching in person and just literally putting in the reps with people over time is then also put in the reps in terms of this is how a lot of people react a lot of the times in a lot of situations.
It's actually, yeah, it's like the doing this since 2011, we'll say.
Hmm.
So that's what it's 2024 now, 13-ish years of experience interacting with people in a one-on-one or group basis. Like the amount of human interaction I've gone through. I've seen fights break out in commercial gyms.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
seeing people do stupid people things, right? That amount of data, that amount of exposure, again, it makes you less surprised when something that someone else might perceive an extreme happens. You're like, I could completely believe that
Yeah.
someone would do that.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. And you
Yeah.
always have that contingency that it's going to happen in the back of your mind.
Mhm.
Is again, it's that thing that you can't switch off. Once you've had the experience one time, like, oh, cool. That's probably what's going to happen every time. And it doesn't until it does. And you're like, aha, I was right.
Yeah.
Clairvoyance. That's what it is.
Yeah. Well, and that's in terms of expectation management to bring it back around with people that we meet. It's there are a lot of harder lessons in life, and that is definitely one of them, or has been for me. It's knowing sort of where to meet people and how to judge. It's the whole thing of you have to meet people where they're at, not where you want them to be. And the ability to detect, assess, and then sort of interpret where that is and what that looks like in real time is a skill that it does take really a lot of stress in order to hone. And I feel like a lot of people have maybe experienced a certain less degree of that stress.
I think that we just cracked my lack of trust for people in deep, meaningful relationships is because most people that I've interacted with haven't actually lost their childlike wonder, and they haven't actually been fully exposed to the responsibility of adulthood. Whereas I've gotten there way too fast in my life and been like, cool, we're gonna go do something, and then you're gonna have a great time up until the exact event that I could have predicted series of events in
Yeah.
like in advance. It's gonna happen, and it's gonna fall on me as the person that totally predicted it happening to clean up.
Yeah.
And you're going to enjoy yourself right until the second it happens, and I'm not going to enjoy myself at all.
At all.
And
Because you
then I'm
see
going
it's
to be
coming.
and then I'm going to be disappointed this entire event and you. And here we are with me lack of trust for humans because no one listens to me the first time around until the bad shit happens.
Yeah. Well, and it's the accountability piece too, right? If the other person were to take on the responsibility of like, yeah, you know what, I chose this, and I know, right? I acknowledge that it's a fuck up. You'd be like, that's nice at least, right? It's not just like, Eric, how come you didn't warn me? It's like, oh, but I did. I sure
How could
did.
I possibly have seen this coming as
Yeah.
the consequence of my own actions?
Yeah. You mean actions have consequences?
Yeah, that's 100%. Like whenever this goes live, I guarantee there's gonna be like 4 or 5 people in my real life that reach out and be like, oh, so that's why you never want to do anything anymore. It's like, yeah, I've been outed. And honestly, by proxy, so have you. And I hope you learn from this.
Yeah, that's right. It's this is no longer projection on either of our parts. Now it's all in it's been communicated to bring it right around to the start of things, right? The experience or the expectations and the thoughts have now been shared. And no names have been
Precisely.
named. So
Yeah.
it's like if you interpret this to be about you, it is.
I love that too. That's one of my go-to moves. Like I'm gonna be ambiguous. And if you happen to identify as the
Yeah.
things I'm speaking to, I mean, I didn't say any names, man.
Yeah.
If you but if you identify with this, maybe you need to look internally.
You know what I like to do? I like to do that, but actually have nobody in mind and then just see what comes out of the smoke, right? Like, bam, smoke bomb. Was this talking about me? It actually honestly was not. No, but it's interesting that you detected that. Says a lot about it, but it's a good lesson. Thought experiment, I guess. Well, I guess you strike me as someone who's also probably quite intrigued by um, what do you call that? Social psychology and just observing people as they live their lives and interact with others. And obviously the degree at which you can put energy into those things, but just the taking in of the information is quite easy and it makes note. It's like data points for the world as we just go about it because it's ultimately probably comes back to keeping us safe and the people we're with safe and risk aversion.
I mean, for the most part, I'm just, and this is probably true of every individual, but I'm just baffled at how more people that I know don't live more like how I live,
Mm,
primarily because I'm so happy and so successful at navigating my life's challenges the ways that I would do them for me, like the
sure.
individualized methods of success that I found. And it goes back to what we were saying about like, okay, my morals, my thought process, my values, but whatever. I can't superimpose that on another person because I have no idea what theirs are or what they think.
Hmm.
But that's probably the number one recurring thing. It's like life would be so much easier if you just did it this way, not fully realizing that they're going to have a different set of values whatsoever. But in terms of social sort of psychology and observing others, I'm like, why don't you just do it this way? Like
Hmm.
I just wait for a rationalization when more often than not, it's just like, okay, I'll just check in on you in like 4 or 5 years. And
Mhm.
ideally you've gotten there. You're like, man, any sort of preparation for life really makes life easier. Like, yeah, it does. Yeah, it really, really does.
Would you say that it's easier for you to detect that in others than yourself, though? Like, that seems to be a pretty common. I think it's just true amongst humans. It's easier to see someone else's bullshit than our own because we can just see it happening. We're not emotionally charged, or we're not engaged, really.
I mean, it comes down to, again, how how deep of a relationship is it really?
Hmm.
Because like if it's a deep relationship, I will internalize immediately. I will immediately put the spotlight on myself. If there's a conflict or there's a perceived slight or anything,
Hmm.
me and my wife, I still to this day, we're 9 years together in August. I still believe we have not had a genuine fight.
Hmm.
Like we've had moments of like, okay, we need to clarify, we need to communicate, we need to figure some shit out. But there's never been an actual, like the way most people would just live their lives normally, like arguments or fights with their spouse or their partner, whatever. It's never happened because I hold her on such a deep, meaningful relationship pedestal
Hmm.
that I am 100% able to realize, like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. And I usually start there.
Yeah.
It's never me against her. It's always us against a situation, us against a problem. And 100%, I'm like, I could easily have a blind spot here. Probably it's something in the middle. It's probably not
Hmm.
100% me, not 100% her. It's probably a miscommunication and something in the middle, but 100%. But then most of the time, if it's not at that deep, meaningful relationship, I can still do it. If it seems like it's not resolving quickly
Hmm.
or not resolving easily, I'll be like, okay, am I fucking up here? Is there something? Do I have a blind spot again? But more often than not, like, usually pretty right. It's a matter of like, how do you navigate someone else that you don't have that deep connection with
Hmm.
to sort of navigate the situation and get to the agreeable endpoint for both parties?
Yeah. It's almost like leading a horse to water. Uh, if the horse doesn't even know it's thirsty, where it's like, I don't want it because you know that if you tell it, hey, I bet you you're thirsty, like, how the fuck do you know? Right. Get all in the, because mostly I think it has to do with ego, and then ego gets in the way, and then emotions get charged, and no productive conversation ever happens between two emotionally charged people. That's been my experience. And
Mhm.
so, but then what I've also learned is that an emotionally charged person doesn't generally appreciate someone who's being quite logical and rational. Right. And so then it becomes an equation of how do I de escalate the situation without sounding condescending in my like calm tone? Because then that can be interpreted as you don't care as much as I do. Because look at you, you're calm and like in Zen. It's like, that's because I can appreciate that if I get worked up like you, we're just going to have a big problem. And I don't want to have a big problem because I care about you. And so, how do we de escalate and everyone gets to a better end result? That's a big sigh. It's like sometimes the answer is, I'm just going to go for a walk. I'll go and I'll come back, or like I'll check in later because this isn't going to resolve. But
That's
obviously,
usually,
yeah.
I was going to say, that's like, it again, it highlights how few, if I have an actual problem with someone, it's not a problem for me to identify and address the problem. But the issue there is there's not a hell of a lot of people that I would actually have that amount of like uh that deep, meaningful relationships or status with where I could
Mhm.
actually give that much of a shit. Things just don't
Sure.
matter that much. So the vast majority of the time, like I'm so laid back and agreeable in most situations with most things, even things that are like could be perceived as a slight or like something like that or taken advantage of. I just don't care enough. It's
No.
if it isn't an immediate threat on me, my person, my friends, my family, my career, my ethics, it's not an immediate like threat, metaphorical or literal. Like, oh, it's whatever, live life. It's not that big of a deal. We're living a pretty cushy life here on the internet. It's all good. When it's someone I actually give a shit about or like deeply like there's an actual connection there, either relationship with my wife, friends, family, stuff like that. It's not a problem at all. I'm just like, okay, so we're gonna diffuse this because one of us, both of us worked up. That's not how this is gonna get resolved, and it's gonna immediately turn into a massive escalation where it's us against each other as opposed to the problem.
Hmm.
As you said, it's just a quick, like Zen, calming. Okay, help me understand your perspective. Maybe not even saying it as literal as that, but you just start digging and you start
Hmm.
to play devil's advocate and like sort of guiding a conversation around the person being able to articulate themselves. Cause it's almost always an inability to correctly articulate the problem or what's bothering someone. And then the opposing party, in this case, say it's you and me, we're having a kerfuffle, muscle bill.
Hmm.
I calm, zen, de-escalate. I need to get out of my own way and I need to get you out of your own way if you're still emotionally like heightened to be able to correctly articulate the problem and your thought process and not just be kind of like just jumbled up and just all like projecting emotion of the time as opposed to the actual needs.
Yeah.
That takes a certain degree of maturity and calmness and slowness, just a plodding, slow application of a conversation. And literally the taking the pace down is usually powerful enough to like completely make the other person or both parties realize, oh, this is silly. Let's discuss this like adults and realize that it wasn't an actual problem to begin with. We were just letting ourselves get elevated.
Yeah. It's the gamification of things. It's like, okay, why are we both taking this so fucking seriously? Because not let's be 90, if not more percent of things aren't worth taking that serious in life. And so having the ability to feel confident in like, is this one of those things? Sometimes the answer will be yes. Fine. Sometimes the answer is yes for one person and not the other. Also fine. But being able to kind of detect that and then just like, okay, can we just, it's the laughter piece. It's the, can we just not, it's the calm down. Like that doesn't work. But what does work
Yeah, exactly.
sometimes is the joke or like, I don't know. It's like the fart joke, right? It's like, it's silly and dumb, but how do you not be like, it shifts the focus point, right?
It's making sure that the person understands that, okay, this, my perception is that we're not fighting and this is us against the situation.
That's right.
They need to also come to that realization. And if
Mhm.
they're on a defensive stance or defensive posture, it's very difficult for them to have an engaging conversation, let their guard down, and actually express themselves. So everything about the part of the conversation about becoming, remaining or becoming calm, and then trying to be sort of like almost like a third party mediator to get that person to be able to articulate themselves properly.
Mhm.
It's about letting them realize like, hey, you don't actually need to be defensive because I'm not coming after you. I'm trying to resolve whatever the discrepancy between our thought processes might be. And again, the reason why it's not a problem to do that for me, for people I care about, is probably because most of these character traits have been, it's like a screening process in advance. I wouldn't be in that sort of
Yeah.
point of vulnerability or a relationship status with someone, friendship, like my wife, or otherwise, whatever. We wouldn't be there if there wasn't some screening process through the years or through whatever method that I might have to like sort of figure out who you are as a person. Wouldn't have been in this situation to begin with. Because, like I said earlier, it would have just been like, well, this doesn't bother me that much because this is not a meaningful relationship, anyways.
Mhm.
Cool. It's not worth me investing any psychological sort of value into this. I'm just going to let it roll off me.
Mhm. Yeah. I don't really know where this thought came from in listening to that, but what did come to mind is the different, completely different question of, do you have any skills or new skills, I should say, or hobbies that you're currently putting time and effort towards learning?
I wish. Well, kind of.
But even in
Sort of.
terms of
It's like,
Wesley, right? As you're talking about future proofing,
yeah.
I was thinking, are there things you want to teach him that you're now brushing up on or something, right?
Yeah, it's, I don't think there's anything necessarily new because everything is learned like about 30 seconds before you actually employ it, at least in my experience. The amount of preparation that I did leading into having my son, you think you're prepared as much as you can be. And caveat, as much as you can be, you can never be actually prepared because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
You know wildly less than even you thought you did. So you get to a certain point where it's effectively you just need, it's self management more than almost anything else. It's making sure that you yourself are presenting as a responsible, reasonable human to a child that is literally developing in front of your eyes. Like they don't
Yeah.
have certain neural connections, they've never experienced certain things. I was joking earlier, I think, if we were recording or not, but like he turned into a hater all of a sudden, and now he doesn't want to eat literally anything today. He's also teething, so that could be having something to do with it. But
Hmm.
like things like that is how good of a command over your own emotions or your own sort of presentation of emotions do you have in that scenario where someone's a nearly 9 month old infant's brain is literally exploding.
Hmm.
They have teeth shoving through their mouth for the first time. They have no idea what's going on. They've never tasted or chewed or had food of any kind almost at all in their entire life. And they're confused and they're flustered and they're frustrated and they're flailing around, maybe throwing shit, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And you as an adult need to be able to internalize that as exactly as I described the situation for the child. Like have that third party empathy of like what they're actually going through,
Mm,
and not just be like, well, you are hungry, therefore you should eat. Therefore, you're being just a disagreeable little brat. It's like not misbehave, like that kind of
yeah.
stuff. It's
Yeah.
tapping into how well can I react to things and how tempered am I and how reasonable am I in these situations. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a new skill per se, because all of those skills you're kind of building in the moment, like changing diapers, clothing, bathing, feeding, developing a human literally. It's
Yeah.
all things that you don't realize, like the intricacies of, like, here, pincer this. Can you actually hold something? Do you have control over your hand? Those are all things that you as the adult realize in the moment and then build off of. It's more so, can you tap into the skills of articulation, communication, verbal and nonverbal, your own temperament, your projection of your temperament? Can you tap into your control over that in the moment with an infant? That's the real skill set that you're developing, is how do you have an environment and a household that's conducive to their growth, both physically and emotionally and mentally, when you yourself, as well as a child, are going through the craziest new experience you've ever had in your entire life.
Hmm. Yeah. I guess what's are you a book guy? Where do you go for like parenting things?
So I okay, well, it went through like an arc.
Sure.
Um, my family didn't have it. My family's weird, man, because like I have the best relationship with my parents, but like, and it's if we went down the rabbit hole of love languages, I actually spoke to my wife for this not long ago because we are like analyzing each other's, and it was like
Mm,
the pseudo self psychology sort of standpoint of like, why do we think this is us? Okay, so for me, acts of service
hmm.
and physical touch,
Hmm.
because my family never hugged, and pretty much I was I was put to work real fast. So anything that takes burden off of me is a reflection, like, and also probably from my childhood, like lack of trust is it's an offshot conversation, but physical acts
Hmm.
are more meaningful to me because it proves the point more so than a verbal sort of affirmation
Absolutely.
does,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Whereas my wife is like words of affirmation because she grew
Yeah.
up in a household where you got zero of that.
Sure.
So it's like we start digging through, and it's like, I don't know how it works. Some of this could be horoscope shit, whatever, right? We're just having fun with it. Um, but like, okay, now we're back in the arc of like, okay, am I a book guy? How do I do all these things? So I never had a tremendous amount of deep conversations within my family. We had a tremendous relationship somehow. Like again, have the best relationship with my brother, unspoken, just probably from like childhood memories and growing up. My parents are kick ass, but we never had like that spoken sort of thing. So I, at a certain stage, just bifurcated. I was like, I'm going to go find a bunch of influences on my own, because
Hmm.
I have this subconscious positive influence of just safe house, like a safety net that you don't realize is actually there, because I was put to work and I went to school and blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
But I had a great thing going on there. But the overt sort of one to one deep conversations, like philosophical or anything like that, that people like to have when they're getting older, like figuring out who are my parents?
Hmm.
What do they think? Stuff like that. Never really there. So I went out, did the podcasting thing, did the whole self-discovery thing, name the five most meaningful books that everybody's going to rattle off, like Dale Carnegie or whatever his name is, like a bunch of
Yeah. How
those,
to win
like
friends.
Outliers, like the whole Malcolm Gladwell sort of the deal, like all the majors. The extent to which I troll people about Atomic Habits, because I'm like, I've read
Hmm.
that book 4 times ago in different iterations. Like, and I've lived my life as a trainer, as someone that's like chopped down trees and climbed mountains in my career. I kind of know Atomic Habits though reading it, and that's where I'm at now.
Hmm.
So I went out and found a bunch of either books, or I found podcasting, and I found these external sources of influence where other people, say through the medium of podcasting, similar to this one, were having these deeper, more meaningful conversations, these like sort of emotionally driven or psychologically driven, like thinking about thinking, being able to look inside and figure out the shit, right? I found a bunch of those, and it really got me to be better at introspection myself.
Hmm.
And through my 20s, I was like, okay, no matter what in my life, I need something for my intellectual development. So, school, other pursuits, hobbies, like recreational intellectual pursuits. I need an artistic outlet. I need a physical outlet. I need something spiritual. And then there was one more, and I don't remember what it was. So, clearly it wasn't as important, but there's those are the four that are top of mind, right?
Hmm.
And all throughout my life, like make sure you maintain those, because those are going to be the major prongs of my self development and my sanity. So, at a certain stage, introspection, like personal introspection, to start to supersede, say, the podcasting or the books, because I'd read enough books and I'd heard enough perspectives where I was like, I kind of have a handle on a lot of the general like layers and topics and things that I should be thinking about of myself,
Mhm.
to the point now where it's like I'll go like, it's more rare now because like I don't have the time or patience, but like isolation tank used to be something that I dove into a little bit.
Mm.
But it then it
Like the
became
float
kind of like
tanks?
now, yeah, it's
Yeah,
mostly
nice.
just because it's like people, oh, sensory deprivation. Dude, it's because I go behind two locked doors and I get like an hour and a half of no one can disturb me. That was the
Mhm.
benefit.
Yeah.
Um, but then it became kind of like ice baths are now, where it's just everywhere and people are just like making their whole personality about it. So I kind of deviated.
Mhm.
Now, if I get like 10 minutes to go stretch, or I can just think in the shower, anywhere where I'm in actual calming isolation
Mhm.
parasympathetic, that's where most of it happens now. It's not books, not podcasts, not necessarily even conversations per se. It's introspection where I can just calm everything and let my brain do its thing for a while.
Mhm.
And that's where we're at now.
Even what about in terms of parenting things? Where are you getting that information from? Or just literally trial and error and you like applying your own like kinesiology and all these human aspects that you're very well educated on already?
Yeah, the physical and nutrition's easy money because I have
Sure.
degrees and experience in that. And like raising a kid nutritionally, it's like I also understand what my experience was.
Mm.
It's behavior, it's the actual parenting shit
Yeah.
that again you're learning at all times from everyone around you. Like if I look at Muscle Bill and his tendencies, I'm like, where do I think those came
Yeah.
from? What are some of the subconscious seeds we can be planting? Something we want to do to us. Like I have my wife is a pharmacist. I have a degree in nutrition, a degree in kinesiology, and then my master's in kinesiology. Those degrees are buried somewhere. My thesis is bound, buried somewhere. Like we have them, but when as in the next couple of years, we're gonna frame them, we're gonna put them on a wall.
Mhm.
Not because I'm forcing the children into school, but we want them to understand from a subconscious level we value education.
Yeah.
So that could be something that they perceive as a value point for themselves as well. Or fuck, if they end up doing trades, who gives a fuck? Like as long as they're into whatever they're doing, they're going to be able to support themselves. But
Yep.
things like that, it's like how do we curate their environment to sort of subconsciously push them in a direction that is going to be beneficial to them long term?
Mhm.
What are experiences from my childhood or my wife's childhood, which we talk about at length now that we have a child ourselves, that were formative or that we perceive as formative? So we know how to like engage in those practices when the times arise. Everyone around you, like I said, is like, okay, what's that behavior? What's that shit behavior? Oh, that's really cool. See another parent do something like that's amazing. And I've got to think about that. Years and years and years of one-to-one personal training, seeing other people's thought process. It's all formative.
Mhm.
So like things like I said earlier, like feeding, changing diapers, like every single day you get a new baby because he's developing so much, even after a nap, that you're like, oh shit, okay, I got to react to this. I got to figure it out.
Yeah.
He's gonna walk in, like we got a baby gate up 30 seconds before he was able to like crawl and like fall down the stairs if he really wanted to. So like we're like stay ahead of certain things. But the real aspects that I am, you look forward to all of it. You don't you want to savor every moment of everything because they grow up so fast. But I actually look forward to being able to have all the way back to the beginning of this sort of discussion point, probably because I lacked them in my own life, in my own childhood. I
Mhm.
look forward to teachable moments because I look forward to having respectful discourse between me and my children where it's a challenge and parents probably screaming at the fucking whatever right now, being like, "Ah, it's not that easy." Maintain a relationship of respectful authority as the guardian, the father above them, whatever, but a respectful discourse where they can accept and understand why certain things are happening, like the teachable moments, the responsibility things, like the real parenting things that go on through the ages. I actually look forward to those because I didn't
Mhm.
have explicit conversations growing up necessarily.
Right. Yeah, and I guess being the authoritative figure and being the hammer in the situation, while also having the like the understanding or them having the understanding that this is because you love me, right? I care, I love you, and I don't want you to hurt yourself. And I'm putting the fucking hammer down so that I am in the place of authority. You need to know that. But I think that's the respect piece too. Like, I don't know that I ever feared my dad, but I definitely, there was definitely respect. It's like, I guess there's a degree of fear there, but it's that's the authority figure, you know,
Mm.
and you are very mindful of that, right? And we were very close, but it's somebody's got to, and I think that's, I have a very limited exposure to children and psychology in that sense. I do think that through life in general, we will test to see who's in charge. And so bringing that back into a child, I could see theoretically that someone's got to run the room and the child needs to know if it's got to be them because in their subconscious, they know that they're not equipped to, right? And so, tantrum, am I in charge? Are you in charge? Who's going to correct this ship from going lost in the storm? If it's you, now I know that. If it's not you, I also need to know that, right? It's because it's important because who's going to keep me safe because I can't do it, right? But then you get into an adult, being able to see things through that lens is like, I still need to do that for myself, right? Who's got the room? A lot of the time, I feel confident I can have the room. Great. Similar to you, right? It's the confidence, it's the speaking, it's the authoritative figure within the space, like your career, for example, the family, or that when the shit hits the fan and someone calls me, I have every confidence that I will say, where are you? I'm coming. Like, if that call happens, one, it means somebody has a perception that I'm in that role in their life. If they have that perception, it's probably because it's fucking true. So,
Yeah, that's the it's a fun part of like projecting the future things that I'll go through. So like as the children grow, the conversations or the acting up or the disciplinary things or the whatever it is, right? Because I remember growing up, I experienced corporal punishment twice, maybe
mhm,
one parent each. My mom apologized after, which was
right,
sweet as button. 'Cause, like,
sure,
and to clarify, I fucking deserve both. Like
sure,
as an
yeah,
adult, as a
yeah,
kid, I could even appreciate that I deserve both.
yeah.
But one
I
time,
fucked
like my
up.
mom's, like yeah, like mom swatted my ass one time, and then like 20 minutes later, as I'm brushing my teeth, getting ready for bed or whatever it was that I was supposed to do, she came in and literally apologized. I'm like, it didn't undo it because your mom and I love mom and you can never
Yeah,
undo the point, but I appreciate the apology.
yeah,
And my dad, I was like super young. I was like four or something like that, three maybe. It's like one of the earliest active memories I have.
mhm,
I was just at like a supermarket, just when they had the metal dividers between checkout lines or whatever, and I was
mhm,
just swinging under back and forth, back and forth.
yeah.
I got two verbals and then one swat on the ass, and it's like, oh shit, okay, I'm gonna stop that now. And it was like, but it's a presence thing. I
Uh-huh,
never needed like a ton of discipline at home for whatever reason because the presence and the aura of my parents, the way they carried themselves, the way that they conducted themselves generally and where I could see them in life, I was like, "Oh yeah, they're the adults. Okay."
mhm.
Like
Same.
they're the authority in the room. Got it. And it's like those are the moments where again, it's gonna it'll be hard. I don't say it's not gonna be, but I look forward to some of those moments where you're confronted with the thing that you wanted to be, or you're confronted with the responsibility of whatever you happen to be in life. So as a parent, your child doesn't just raise themselves. And if they do, you can see that in society from
Mhm,
children who had to raise themselves. You're going to be confronted with moments where, okay, there has to be a punishment, or there has to be a teachable moment, or there has to be something has to happen. And oh shit, way back to the beginning of this conversation, I'm the adult in the room now. It's my responsibility to manage this situation so that
mhm,
all parties get their needs met. And sometimes the party of a child getting their needs met is they need an educational experience that isn't necessarily going to be the most fun for them because they can't just be a wild child that runs shit. They need to have discipline incurred. But also discipline isn't just, beating your child like
yeah,
generations of old. It's like how do we take the aspects that will get the job done now, but also the aspects that will get the job done in the long term.
mhm,
Me getting a light swat on the ass from my parents that by today's day and age wouldn't even pass as like you wouldn't even blink your eye at. You think they were just roughhouse playing.
mhm,
That was enough discipline to get me to stop whatever I was doing then. How do I get to that point based upon my experience with my parents?
mhm. Yeah, well, and I think obviously time will tell, but I think you're doing it. It's providing an environment in which he can be a child and not grow up too fast. And you have and your wife clearly both have the awareness that that is a thing, right? And that's the thing that you don't want to rush because it will happen inevitably in time, right? We all grow into the adults that we question ourselves to be, and just like continue doing that until we don't, right? But when kids can be kids, and that's the learning. It's the, I guess that goes all the way back around to like, if he throws a pot on the ground and nobody gets hurt, it's like maybe when he's big enough, you give him the broom and say, the consequence is you've got to clean that up. Right. Or I remember one of the rules was if my dad stepped on a piece of Lego in the night, the Lego goes in the garbage. It's like, well, yeah, same with the dog. If the dog chewed a toy, the toy is now gone. Clean up your shit, right? That's the message. Got it.
So, and that's to me, like, that's actually extremely effective and intelligent parenting because you know who ultimately that onus is on?
Me.
The parent. No, no, no,
Well,
it's the parent. Because
in
so
which,
here's how my brain unpacks that.
yeah, let's
Okay,
go.
so you've been told, okay, if I step on a Lego in the middle of the night, that Lego goes in the garbage. Cool. Who's ultimately responsible for
Oh,
buying the original Lego and then
yeah,
inevitably replacing the Lego?
right. It's
Mom
them.
and
Uh huh.
so they're willingly taking the thing. Okay, here's the lesson. Here's the rule. You have broken that rule. I have already invested the money to give you this toy. I'm going to willingly throw it in the garbage so that you understand the lesson that there is consequences behind not listening to the rules. And then like an appreciable amount of time later, where you don't put it all together as
Sure.
literally having no consequences, you will get your Lego replaced because reasons,
Yeah.
right? Like at the end of the day, they ate the cost of replacing the thing to be the punishment that
To
got the
teach the
job
lesson.
done, right?
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it was an appropriate consequence for the crime. And at the end of the day, as in my opinion should always happen, the parent takes the fall every time.
Hmm. Well,
There you
and
go.
it's this is the follow through. And then I'm sure there's a certain degree of like not wanting to, right? It's like, because you can see your child deriving joy from said toy or said experience or whatever. And then now, based off of their own negligence, you now have to take it away because you said you would. It's like, right. I don't really want to do that. And yet there's a lesson to be learned. It's a teachable moment, as you're saying. And that's, yeah. And dealing with the breakdown that inevitably probably came after, like, you know, well, that's just par for the course, I guess.
It literally is. It's me
Yeah.
projecting my future as described because that'll be one of those moments where, oh,
Yeah.
he has no idea what food is right now and needs to literally learn every skill from breathing to putting food in his mouth to walking because he's never experienced it before and he doesn't have them now. Oh, consequences. Oh, rules. Oh, he has to experience them at some stage to
Hmm.
have that as a frame of reference for why things are the way that they are. So
Right.
there's like really no avoiding a lot of these experiences for either party. Like at some stage, there will be a rule that needs to be applied. That rule will be broken and a consequence needs to be delivered such that that rule actually has meaning. Sick. We all get to experience a terrible experience.
Yeah. Everybody involved hates their life for a moment or many, and then it dissolves over time and improves. Um, yeah. I wanted to, I guess, two last things come to mind here. For a dad update, could you pick three words to describe what being a father feels like right now?
Three words that describe what it's like.
Ish, three ish.
Trying to choose the right ones, honestly, because it's a privilege and it's beautiful chaos. So that'd be the
Hmm.
three. It's like
Nice.
beautiful can also stand alone.
Yep.
And chaos doesn't even necessarily have to be a bad connotation, but it's
No,
true. It's like because
I don't
every
have a
day is a different
connotation.
day. Like juggling work, life, my relationship with my wife, my pets, the child dynamic now, like juggling it all. It's fucking chaos. Like no one day, no matter how you project it, predict it, schedule it, it's never going to go the exact. It's absolute chaos. It's like whatever the child needs or however it's going to go, it's going to go. But it is a tremendously beautiful experience, even within that chaos. Like to see a child develop and to see yourself develop as you experience the same things that the child is for the first time. First steps, first tooth, to go from gums to teeth, sleeping through the night, putting oneself back to sleep, the ability to actually grasp and hold things. It's all beautiful. It's all crazy to see for the first time. And it's a privilege because the something that I never had a frame of reference for up until when we had our son. But when kids, when they're younger, would be like, "Oh man, fuck you, mom. I didn't ask to be born." It's like, oh, I never really understood that at all
Mm,
because like I didn't. But then whenever my son is going through anything, or anything that I can do that would have a negative consequence for him, or like anything that would not benefit him at all, or he would have to suffer the brunt of like something for,
Mhm.
be it me investing my money in something dumb and it could have gone to his tuition, or like anything, like anything, right? Like, oh wait, he didn't ask to be born. This is a responsibility that I willingly undertook. I brought him into this world with my wife. He otherwise didn't exist. So anything that he does, it can't be construed as a burden because he didn't ask to be born. I brought him into this world.
Mhm.
So it's like a tremendous privilege to be gifted a son in this respect that I can help grow, shape, mold, and provide for.
And then also continue to learn from, right? Because as you said, he's experienced everything for the first time, as are you. How is it? So this is just a side thought. How do you find for yourself, like finding empathy and grace for yourself in acknowledging that this is the first time and that ultimately we don't have any real fucking idea what we're doing, but we're just legitimately trying and hoping for the best. Like leading with love is the phrase that comes to mind.
Dude, there's been some times, not a lot, but like the classic, like I'm a bad parent, like just beating yourself up over things that either you couldn't control, you could never foresee, or something like that. And it's ultimately
Mhm.
like, no, everything's gonna be fine. Um, but in a lot of those times, it's like I envision everyone I've ever known in my life, and I'm like, somehow all of us got to where we are. We all survived childhood through
Yeah.
various parents, through various situations, various circumstances. The nameless, faceless, dumbest people that I know that have kids are all doing it somehow. And I'm like, I got a head on my shoulders, sort of. I
Yeah.
think I should be able to do this. Um, the extent to which even talking about like him like rebelling against eating lately, like solids at least. It's like I don't know a single child that doesn't eat. It's like just thought counter thoughts like that. It's like it may be hard now because you're a dumbass that's doing this for the first time.
Right.
He's gonna eat. He's gonna, whatever the problem might be. It's like
Hmm.
get through each day situation, like play, like the phrase play the man, like in sport, play the
Yeah.
baby. Just whatever you got going on right now, play that baby right there and there.
Hmm. Well, it's the one that's in front of you, right?
Yeah.
And I think to go to the food thing, I saw a stat or like a video one time, I guess, but it's that some children can take up to 100 exposures to any given food before they become accustomed to it. And so, like, when people say, "Oh, I tried it," we gave it to them every day for a week and they didn't eat it. It's like, that's literally 7 times out of 100.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Keep,
and we've had either experiences ourselves or definitely read or heard from friends and family too, where it's like, yeah, and at this age, they just had an egg embargo. They were just, you know what, no more. I don't want
yeah,
it anymore. And it's all right, cool. So play the
yeah,
baby, got it.
yeah. And ultimately, as you said, they will eat. Especially, he's literally learning how.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate you coming back on, man. Time has kind of flown by again. So, do you have anything you want to kind of close with? Any thoughts? Current dad advice?
I mean, lately it's been my fucking craw was like 1% less traumatic per day. And like, that's my shit. Cause it's like, again, the older you get, the more you realize most things that agitate you growing up don't really matter. And it's like, you don't explicitly state that to someone that's growing up because it's the most important thing that's ever happened to them up until that moment. But as you yourself get older, just realize that nothing is as crazy or as important as you think it is. It's not as damning as you think it is. And everybody be calm and relax and 1% less traumatic per day. And aside from that, like, there's a reason why I kind of want to come back on and I'll do these as amazing one because they're fun conversations that not a lot of people really are willing to or actively engage in. It's also, at least in the world that I operate in online, it's all very superficial and it's hard to make deep connections because it's all DM based or it's like at the
Mhm.
best voice notes. So it's engage in long form conversation with each other and like actually try to understand someone's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. That's why I'm doing this. I love talking to interesting people, man, and it turns out I know a lot of them. So I get to just sit down and take the allotted time with you to have the conversation. So I derive, I will just say for all argument's sake, an equal amount of excitement and joy doing these things. And so I appreciate your time and well, and your coaching ability and all of that. Yeah, you're very good at what you do, and I am excited to watch you continue to do it.